actually shifting today, as well as the temperatures are fast rising in their levels, and the sea levels also are changing. And we know that Mother Earth must still continue on to supply us with our basic needs: air, water, a safe place to live in, as well as food. And yet, we can ask, what have we done to Mother Earth? And what are the things that we need to expect from it? Dynamic Living, the Total You, would like to invite you, dear viewers, in the next 60 minutes as we discuss here with you the Embattled Earth and You. I am very much honored to have with me here our friends from the government agencies who are actually our partners in making sure that we understand what is going on around us. I'd like to welcome first here with me Ma'am Teresita De Peñoso. She's the Assistant Regional Director, Department of Agrarian Reform, Region 10. Mayang gabi sa imo, Ma'am Tess.
Good evening also, Miss Jean.
Yes,
thanks for inviting us.
Yes, of course. Marami kami matutunan ngayon sa iyo because we know that basically, di ba, alam natin yung nangyari, latest, no, na alam natin yung sa Cotabato, no?
Yes.
So we'd like to discuss a little of that also. And of course, hindi naman po pwede na wala yung ating kaibigan sa Pag-asa Mindanao, the officer in charge. We have Miss Anyanita, Miss Ann Fortich. Welcome to Dynamic Living again the second time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for inviting again.
Baka pwede mo na i-project at sabihin sa mga tao ngayon, kailan ba tayo magkakaroon ng ulan?
Yes.
Kasi sobrang init na talaga.
Dapat abangan nila ngayon kasi sasabihin ko.
Yes, that's true. And of course, andito din po sa ating show ngayon, our friend from the DENR, Region 10. He is actually the Chief of the Information Education of Environmental Management Bureau, no? Mr. Sammy Alonto, welcome to the show, Sammy.
Assalamualaikum, ma'am. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and of course, heto na nga yung pag-uusapan natin, napakaganda ngayong gabing ito. We know that, let me ask you, Sir Sammy, hetong nangyari sa atin kamakailan lang, wherein so much, you know, a lot of people really suffered from this, yung sendong na ito. Would you say na hetong sendong na ito nangyari because of the changes in the climate that we have now?
Oo naman. Malaki ang contribution ng pagbabago ng klima sa nangyari sa atin, lalo na yung mga taong hindi nakialam na dapat nakialam na before. Ngayon, mas na-realize ng mga tao, nakita nila, kagaya na na-mention sa akin kanina ni Ma'am, na dapat matuto muna yung mga tao bago natin makuha yung gusto natin.
Kung baga, there has to be an event that will trigger something before we learn from it, no? Pero dapat hindi ganun dapat hindi tayo reactive Proactive tayo, ma'am, dito ba?
Dapat ang consciousness ng ating mga katauhan ay dapat ma-energize para sila ay conscious sa mga protection sa ating environment.
Yes, kasi parang pinabayaan natin ng matagal si Mother Earth. Para bang nanay natin yan na binaliwala lang natin hanggang sa tumanda na siya at nawala na, di ba? Let me ask you, Miss Ann. Miss Ann, heto ang, you know, I'm just curious, totoo ba na magkaiba ang ibig sabihin ng global warming at saka ng tinatawag na El Nino?
Yes, Doc Jane. Ang El Nino is a recurring event. Pabalik-balik na siya. Every 2 to 7 years, babalik talaga siya.
Kung baga, there's no way na you can evade that. Kasi it's a cycle.
Whether we like it or not.
Pero, yung global warming, it's because nag-warm yung ating mundo because of human activities. Lalo na ngayong mga panahon na to, na ang mga tao gustong magkapera agad. Gusto para bang diretso talaga na kumita. So, hindi nila alam na nakasira na ng ating kalikasan.
Which are actually kagaya nito, ang mga tao gustong-gusto bumili ng bagong sasakyan. O kaya yung mga lumang sasakyan, ayaw pa din ipa-repair. Diba? That is part of it. Ayaw i-dispose.
Yes. Gusto na kasi ng mga tao na mag-accumulate ng mga properties, maski hindi na kailangan.
Yung pwede kang maglakad, kailangan gumamit ng sasakyan. Yung mahilig tayong bumili ng masyadong maraming packaging. Pati yung paggagamit natin plastic. Yan ang mga simpleng bagay na laki-laki ng epekto niya sa ating...
Yes, gusto ko yung sinabi mo, sir, na sabi mo, marami tayong mga plastic na bit-bit, marami tayong mga gamit na gustong gamitin na dapat hindi naman siya friendly sa ating environment.
Yes, ma'am. For
Paano, how does it affect the environment? Like for example, plastic na lang, gusto pa natin. Alam mo bang mga tao nagrereklamo pag nandyan sa isang grocery na ang pinaglalagyan paper bag, yung brown bag.
Madaling
Kasi
masira.
madaling masira.
Hindi
Di
pa
ba?
naman yung konting sacrifice naman natin yun. Ano ba naman yung mahihirapan na ng konti? Kasi for example lang, ako mahilig ako sa tinapay, Dok. Bibili ka ng pandesal, nilagay mo sa isang plastic. Bumili ka ulit ng pandimongo. Isang
Panibagong
plastic na naman.
ulit.
Pwede ba natin gawin yun parang sabi nga, i-reduce lang natin. Pwede ba natin ipaghalo? Wala namang masama kung maghalo yung mga palaman nila.
Dapat, i-ano natin, ito ang gigon nila nga magdala kag bag.
Eco bag.
O, eco bag. Pag magadto ka sa mall, handa na ang imong bag. Para di na ka mag-accumulate og daghan nga plastic. Tuwing
Kaya
bili.
sabi nila ma'am, yung sabi nila na reuse,
Recycle and
Recycle.
reduce, di ba? So,
Practice and
ito yung
recycle.
tatlong ito na dapat
3 Rs.
pinapractice natin So, to you ma'am, sa inyong office ninyo, sa Department of Agrarian Reform, pag sinabi natin climate change, ano ang mga activities na ginagawa ng mga tao na nakakasira dyan?
Actually, yung aming sa mga farmers group, yung ginagawa nilang kaingin system, sinusunog yung mga
Is it still in practice now?
in some areas. In fact, in the sugar cane plantation, they have to burn the
yung mga
shit-
stocks nila?
stocks
Oo.
nila to give way for the growth of the new ones. So nakaka-affect yan sa climate change.
So what are
Also,
we doing about it? Like for example, are we educating them na pwede silang gumamit ng iba? Hindi yon?
Yes, in fact, there are mga technology that is being implemented in one of our foreign assisted project, Minsaad area, that also caters on some mitigating factors in the climate change. We also teach the farmers like the CPWAS. We have a CPWAS project that the waste of the animals are being gathered and that will produce
fertilizer.
Methane gas.
So
Methane gas. So,
hindi lang
na-recycle.
fertilizer yun, kundi methane gas
methane
talaga.
gas. So,
Opo.
we teach some of these technologies to
Malakas yung
our
amoy.
agrarian farm beneficiaries.
Sa pigiri siguro.
Hindi siya mabaho.
Hindi sa mabaho.
Oo. Biogas.
Biogas.
No, biogas.
So those were some of the technologies or assistance that the DAR is giving to our farmers to control or introduce some mitigating factors.
Pero
in climate
heto
change.
ma'am, this is an ongoing project of
Yes.
the government. Hindi
Yes.
siya yung ngayon lang kasi reactive nga tayo Parang dahil ngayon sa dami ng problema natin sa ating Mother Earth, ngayon lang natin ginagawa. Would you say na this has been going on for a long time and yet matigas ang ulo ng mga tao?
I think sometimes also it lacks the support of our local government units, especially to the poor farmers that they requires sa mga construction materials that is needed in the establishment of those mga projects.
So kung baga
So-
ma'am, you're saying na kailangan na tulungan pa rin ng
Yes.
government, lalo na ng LGUs, ang mga farmers
Yes,
natin.
dapat lang yun silang bibigyan more ng priorities in support of their livelihood, considering that they are considered as the poorest.
Yes.
of the
At saka
poor.
imagine mo naman
So,
kung wala
silang kapital.
walang farmers. So, anong kakainin
Oo,
natin,
yun.
di ba?
Walang kapital sila.
Di man
sa
to tanan
kailangan.
nagtanom.
Oo, tinuod na siya.
So tapos they lack the necessary support services, just like health services. So meaning kung weekend sila, they are not healthy also. So they cannot go to their farms and do their livelihood.
So kailangan talaga natin suportahan natin ang ating mga farmers.
Sa
Now,
ngayon.
Sir
Sa
Sammy,
ngayon. Kailangan.
ano ecosystems? Pag sinabi mong ecosystems, ano ibig mong sabihin nito?
Ecosystem, yung nasa kapaligiran natin, lahat na nakikita natin. In connection naman sa topic natin, Doc,
Yes.
malaki kasi personally, malaki kasi ang role ng climate sa ecosystem. Kasi kung wala yung climate, yung cycle, halimbawa masyadong mainit, for example, yung mga animals, yung birds, kasi kung masyadong mainit, pwede sila lumipat, pwede sila mag-migrate.
Nagmamigrate sila, no?
Actually,
Other
sa office namin
latitudes.
sa DNR compound, I was so amazed na may nakita akong black na bird. Sabi kasi ng
galing?
director, sabi niya, sa akin yan na. So meron ako natin na seminar, pinakita yung mga pictures. Then surprisingly, they're from Thailand. They're not originally
They're
from
not originally from the
Oo,
Philippines.
Thailand sila.
So nag-migrate sila sa atin.
Nag-migrate sila
to other
dito.
latitudes.
Oo.
Oo. Ganun.
Pero Pero di ba, meron din, if you notice minsan while you're watching, I am amazed by this kind of pictures that we see, no? Na sometimes, yung flock of birds, ang
Yeah.
dami-dami nila,
Lumilipad.
sabay-sabay silang
Sabay-sabay
aalis at
silang
lilipad.
aalis.
That's part of the,
Yes.
by
Yes.
which they respond to the
Oo.
climate change.
Especially, merong study from sa States na yung mga butterflies, mas maaga nang umaalis.
Magsilipatan.
So mas maaga naman dumarating sa kanila. So yung balance ng yung mating ng mga birds, ng mga animals, naiba na kasi gawa nung hindi na timing yung dating ng init or longer yung lamig or longer yung init.
So affected pala talaga lahat ng bagay,
Everybody.
no? When there's a change in the
climate.
temperature,
Domino effect.
maybe so domino effect
Oo.
siya. Eh, Ma'am Ana,
Yes.
paano to? Would you say na because of these events that are happening to us, hetong ating temperature ngayon, paano ito? Would you say na kayo, napopredict ba ninyo yan na heto, this is only for a certain period of time na umabot na yata tayo ng 40 degrees centigrade?
Mainit na talaga.
Mapipredict dahil, di ba, i-compare nimo sa atong normal nga temperature for the last 30 years. Kung imong nakita sa everyday nato, sige na siya og saka. So, kung imo na siyang i-average, mas taas na siya, then nakita na sad ang impact sa emission sa ato ang greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So kung daghan ang atong emission concentration sa gitawag na mga carbon dioxide, ang ato ang methane ug atong nitrous oxide, possible mag-continue ang pag-init sa ato ang atong mundo. So mo increase ang atong temperature kay kana nga mga gases gitawag mo na natong blanket of the atmosphere. So dili na maka-escape back dito sa space ang uban nga gitawag na tong long wave radiation because
Nabaga na
naglabaw
sila.
na siya, nagbaga na kay siya sa iyang limit.
Exceed
Oo.
na siya.
Kay before man was created, naa na gyud nang gitawag na to greenhouse gases kay di man ta mabuhi, gi-prepare man na sa tuang creator kay para mo survive ang man, ang plants ug ang animals.
All living things, so to speak.
So, gi-prepare ang earth. So, ang nahitabo, kita,
I-abuse.
tao, gi-abuse man kay kita ba ang
I-abuse.
nagkuan sa kitang nagtagdumala sa kalibutan. So, ang nahitabo, atong gi-abuse. Kay gusto magitang muyaman tagdali, paspas tanan.
Managingon ni Sir Sammy, di ba? He was saying something kanina na ginagmayng butang lang, kaya nato himuon para unta nga atong maprotektahan si Mother Earth, di ba? Ma'am,
That requires consciousness
Uh-huh.
of all the human beings in this world to protect the
So, ma'am,
environment.
let's go about the farming technologies.
Yes.
Nung years back, say 20, 30 years ago, ang ilabang ways of farming, aside sa pagkaingin, nakatabang ba na nga muhimo nga, the effects that we have now, or mas na-lessen siya tungod kay, lesser ni ato ang effect tungod kay they go back to yung mag-aararo lang sila, kaysa ngayon naka-tractor na, kung ano-ano mga gamit, yes.
Before, we do not have the technology right now. So before, mas lessen ang risk sa
Farmers.
climate sa farmers because there are also few who are farming. But this time, ang accumulation of the methane gas is very low also. But this time, because there is now the mass production or the corporate farming that we say, that contributed also to the...
Does this climate change, itong mga effects na to, also affects the production of the crops?
Very well, yes. Yeah, it has affected because the fertility of the soil is also affected. So that reduced the production of the farmers. So lesser production, lesser income. So the poverty is there.
So parang it's a cycle.
It's a cycle.
Paano kaya kung palitan na lang yung tinatanim nila pag masyado nang mainit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there
Halimbawa,
such a thing? Is there such a
Ibang
thing, di ba,
tawag
Sir
niyan.
Sammy, na is there such a thing as parang yung mga seeds genetically modified
Na
para
makasurvive siya sa
siya?
May mga
temperature.
plant na siguro.
Pero yun ang problema natin ngayon kasi hindi na natin ma-estimate kung kailan darating yung yung pag-change ng climate. In fact, ang ating season ngayon hindi na regular.
Hindi na siya nag-normal.
Hindi na
Oo.
nag-normal.
Ang temperature number 1, yun na siya ba? Kay 1
Oo.
degree nga increase din sa tropics, mag-decline ang ato ang crop production by 10%.
May 10%.
Oo.
So for
1 degree lang yan.
For 2 degrees,
For
that's
2 degrees,
20%.
2 to 6 degrees, it's 29 to 60% decrease.
Sa atong production.
Sa production.
And siguro the quality also of the
Yes,
product.
affected.
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 So paano yun? What should we do? We'll take a very short break, and when we return, we'll continue on with our very interesting topic here on climate change, on what we can do and how we can help Mother Earth. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to Dynamic Living, the Total You, with our episode, The Embattled Earth and You, and us actually. So kanina, di ba, we were discussing about for every degrees centigrade na increase, will also have an effect on the
Decline.
production, on the decline.
Yung
Hindi
decline
yung sa
production.
increase na ano niya.
Decline,
Yes, Sammy, you were saying something about kanina.
O yun na nga, ma'am. Kung ang maganda sigurong gawin, palitan na lang halimbawa yung mga nagtatanim ng palay, kasi sobrang init, magpalit na lang sila ng mga pananim.
Yun nga ang introduce ngayon, sasabi natin ng crop rotation. Crop rotation. Meron
Yes.
tayong mga interventions diyan, crop rotation. But at the time that requires crop rotation, wala namang available na mga seedlings.
So, nandun
Di ang
naman
mahina.
yung intervention.
intervention.
Mahina ang
Mahina.
intervention.
Hindi naman kaagad mabigyan ng anong solusyon dahil
Pero-
naghihintay pa naman ng ilang mga araw o ilang buwan.
Wala pa tayong strategy.
Pero hindi ba dapat na being in this generation now, hindi ba dapat proactive na tayo na nape-predict na natin? Let's ask muna si Miss Anne. Say for example kayo, Miss Anne, can you plot or graph na kunyari heto yung magiging temperature or heto yung magiging climate natin for the first 6 years or 10 years, or hindi ninyo kaya yon?
Kaya yun. Hanggang 2,100 na pipredict na natin.
Okay.
O sa 2020, 20, naano tayo increase sa temperature from 0.9 to 1.1 degree. Then by 20,050, ang atong increase naanata siya sa mag-range siya between 1.9 to 2.2 degrees Celsius. So by 2,100, na siya sa 2 plus ang hanggang...
So you're talking about like for example karon kung ang ato ang temperature naa sa 38 degrees, you're talking about 39 to 40 degrees.
Yeah.
So muna na siya ang kuwan nato. In terms of typhoons or mga storms, would you say na heto ngayon it will become stronger and it will be more devastating in its effect?
Yes. Kuha na siya. Pagtaas sa temperatura, magpaspas o form ang atong mga dagom. So, ang atong kadagatan, init. So, warmer water, more ang moisture. So, ang evaporation, mas taas. Then, dako nga clouds, of course, dako po nga bagyo ang atong ma-form.
And-
So, mao na siya, nga devastating na gid siya, kay, kuan man, more mga tuang precipitation, more ang ayang moisture. So, with increasing temperature, more and devastating typhoons.
Pero considering na alam naman ni Pag-asa, nasabi naman na nila, ma'am. So what is the Department of Agrarian Reform, the Department of Agriculture, and the DNR doing now? So what are your programs?
Very interesting to note that the Pag-asa can determine.
Yeah, they can predict, they can project.
the project.
Oo.
But sad to note that as one of the implementing agencies, it seems nga it is not being synchronized with our
plans.
Agencies.
with our plans agencies, considering the
Ang connection.
Oo. So, I think
So medyo weak ang link.
So, ang link namin sa... So,
Kasi
at,
if you-
at this point of time, siguro, kailangan ang strong and closer collaboration with the Pag-asa, the Weather Bureau, with the farming sector, para ma-addressan yung mga ganong sitwasyon.
Kasi ma'am, like for example, yung sinabi ni Sammy kanina, yung mga seeds na gagamitin, maybe we will be able to plant different types of
Types of
Kasi meron na
crops.
silang
Kasi meron na silang
alam na nila
alam na
mangyayari
nila.
2020.
Kabalo ko ma'am nga, ang agriculture, ang Department of Agriculture, naana sila mga plants nga katong gitawag nila drought tolerant crops, na siya, napos sila plants nga para pod sa kanang ting tubig bitaw ting
Kanang wet days na to,
Oh,
oo.
naa siya.
Oo.
So sa tuno nga wala siya karon
Yeah.
dapat nato sila.
Agriculture.
Oo, ang agriculture kabalo ko. Tapos gitawag na nilang diversification of kanang crops bitaw nga
Ang
dili lang
kailangan
isa.
dyan, Doc, is
Isa.
Dili lang isa.
information drive siguro sa mga farmers.
Yes. So the
Continuing.
farmers should always be, educated
Oh, to be
also,
informed.
di ba?
On the
And to be
Kasi
informed
most
on the
probably,
weather.
ang reaction nila is, hindi namin kwan yan.
Hindi na alam.
Oo, hindi namin alam
yeah.
yan.
Actually, ma'am,
They are not
naa
aware.
namin gihimo nga kana bitong climate field school. Naa na sila, climate field school.
So what does that climate field school do?
Mga farmers na siya nga gitun-an nila kung unsa ang pagsaka sa temperature, unsa ilang dapat buhaton.
okay. That's
So pattern na siya sa Indonesia, sa Malaysia, pattern na siya sa other countries.
When was
but
that
not
started? When was it started
Ay,
sa iyo
way
mga-
back 2008 pa na siya, ma'am. Pero di lang nimo kay pila
Lagi-
ramang
pila
good
ramang
ang
good ang-
pag-implement,
oo.
dili lagi
Oo, lagi
imong
na.
paspas
Nga,
kay
it's not being
pundo ba
considered by the
gyapon na
LGU.
siya. So,
So
na siya.
in other
Tie up
words,
na sa agriculture.
yeah, in other words, here we see the need actually to give the correct information and also educating them, no? Because I'm pretty sure itong mga farmers natin would be very, very happy to know na heto yun. But they need help also, di ba? For them to be able to start with that. So sa inyo sa DENR, how do you protect the natural resources?
The DN has several bureaus, may mga line agencies yan tulad ng mines. Kami sa Environmental Management Bureau, what we are doing, we are regulating, nire-regulate namin. Kasi ang malaki kasi, especially in our area, malaki ang contribution ng tourism. Hindi natin napapansin yan, pero sila talaga. For example, yung mga napoproduce na mga aeroplano, sila pumunta dito. So, ang ginagawa namin, nire-regulate namin sila. Ultimo mga generator set, may mga permits diyan, dapat makuha nila. We are monitoring big companies. Actually, there are so many companies that parang galit sa amin kasi we have to, nangyari na kasi sa atin to nangyari na yung sendong, everybody knows na nangyari sa sendong. So, what we can do now is, there are two ways lang to mitigate and adapt lang. At least ma-minimize lang natin or at least ma-minimize natin kung ano maging impact sa atin kung di tayo gumalaw sa mga
So,
simpleng...
so in other words, Sam, you're telling our viewers na yung role ninyo sa DENR is also in terms of the giving of permits, monitoring
Yes, yes.
the
Yeah,
activities,
regulating the
and
activities.
regulating ito.
Not
Kasi,
only the households, but big companies, factories.
so malaki-laki, malawak din yung inyong sinasakupan. And you understand na, syempre, with this kasi, DENR understand na the environment per se has to be protected.
Talaga, kailangan talaga.
Sila
So,
ang in charge.
Kayo ang in charge
Hindi,
nun,
yun,
di ba?
Totally.
doon ang misconception talaga eh.
Yung ECC.
Kasi when you see,
ECC.
when people hear DNR, ang na-picture nila is puno.
Yes,
Diba?
kahoy.
Ultimo logo eh, puno.
Puno.
Hindi lang it's beyond that, it's beyond trees. Kailangan
Pero
natin.
you have this program of planting trees, di ba?
Yes, yes,
Sa
yes.
inyo yan na program, di
Kaya nga, I
ba?
disagree. I read a newspaper that the tree planting of dinner was a failure. I don't think so. I don't think that's a failure. Talagang, kuhan lang talaga siguro. Gawa lang siguro ng pag-change ng climate. Kasi we can...
And
Unpredictable
maybe
kasi.
you also mentioned kanina before the show na heto hindi lang naman ang pagtatanim ang mahalaga ang pag-aaruga noon para naman tumubo siya, di ba? Madali lang naman mag-plant diyan,
Kaya sabi nga,
pero
di ba,
ang pagpalaki.
Narinig mo sila sa Doc yung kay Confucius yung give a man a fish, di ba? And he will live for a day. Then teach him how to fish. He will live forever. Ang nangyari kasi dyan, yung pinaka-importante lang kasi personally, yung i-educate mo yung tao, tell them ano yung pwedeng maging impact kung di niya to ginawa o pag ganito ang ginawa niya. Especially mga kabataan. Yun na nakakalimutan eh. Kasi yung mga medyo may edad na, ano pa ituturo mo sa kanila, alam na nila yan. Doon tayo magsimula sa mga bata talaga. Kasi ipe-prepare natin sa kanila ang environment sa future nila.
Which part of the natural resource is the most affected ngayon sa ating climate change?
Actually, kung that question is wala sigurong very specific. Kasi it's safe to
Lahat
say na
sila?
lahat talaga.
Yung mga isda natin, yung corals natin, yung lahat yan sila, are they getting affected also?
Yes, lahat. May mga...
Kasi ang nakikita kasi natin, kaya I'm asking you that, which you
Nasa
will have
taas
to
lang.
expound Ang nakikita kasi natin, ma'am, yung mga kahoy,
Yung mga kahoy.
at saka yung mga halaman, di ba, na
Underground.
namamatay
Marine,
ngayon.
underground,
Di ba? Pero
marine
yung underground,
resources.
paano to sila? Are they also affected?
Fishermen can attest na mas naging lessen na kanilang harvest. Kasi sobrang init na. Pag masyado nang mainit, may impact na yung
Isda.
production nila, yung isda nila.
Kunti ang nakukuha. No?
May mga dolphins, lumalapit na sila sa extinction eh. And I read an article that ano yung pinakasikat sa Bohol na
Tarsier.
tarsier. Kuha na sila, affected
na,
na rin
affected
sila.
na sila.
May possibility na maubos talaga sila. Gawa nung
So there is that great fear na there will be some species that will become extinct.
yes, marami.
Yeah.
Marami siguro, sa atin hindi natin napapansin kung wala na pala. Pansinin yung butterflies.
Nawala na.
Konti na lang.
Konti na
diba?
lang.
Di ba? Nung araw, makikita mo sila
I was so
ali-aligid.
surprised. May nakita ako. Ano yung reaction ko? Sabi ko, butterfly. So, na-realize ko, ba't ako na-surprise? So,
Kasi
meaning to
konti
say,
ka na lang nakita.
matagal ko na sila hindi nakita.
Pero yung experience sa Miss Oak na yung mga isda doon, lumalabas na sa dagat.
Oo.
Hindi nila kaya, wala
Hindi
na
na kaya.
oxygen.
Mamamatay na
Oxygen.
yun.
Kasi mamamatay na sila.
Ano na sila, mamamatay na
Masyado
yun.
nang mainit
Oo,
doon.
tapos
Maliban
yung
sa intervention ng mga
polar
companies,
bear.
mga oil field. Pero yun, natural yun eh. Yung corals, yung nagpo-produce na sila ng... So, namamatay na yung mga fish. So, domino effect na naman tayo, yung mga
So,
fishermen.
in other words, yung mga nakikita natin ngayon, may possibility that the coming generation may not be able to see them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
rather just read on them.
Yes.
So, it's a sad story kung
Yeah.
ganyan, hindi nila maano.
May experience.
What about Miss Anne?
Yeah.
Heto ba, meron ba tayong lugar dito sa Philippines na as the temperature rises, no, dahil because of the climate change and the global warming and whatever we can call them, meron ba tayong isang place dito na
Safe?
it will continue to be cooler despite the fact na, and it will be safer for all of us?
So far, sa nakita nato sa mapa, na map out ng mga temperature, tanan nga lugar mag-increase.
So wala
so
gid
wala
gihapon.
Sa mga cold nga area, mabawasan ang ilahang pagka-cold. Oo,
So ma-minus gihapon.
Ma-minus gihapon. Ang ila, like for example, Malay-Balay.
Aha.
Tungnawang
Yeah,
Malay-Balay.
araw,
Oo,
isipin
nung
mo,
araw.
oo.
Pagdating ko ng Malay-Balay,
Ayun, mainit.
way back 1991, maraming fogs. Hindi mo makikita yung mukha mo sa umaga.
Ayun, wala
Ang
na.
temperature na, kasi as an observer, I know the temperature at the time, way back 1991, mag-range pa kami ng 11 degrees. Karon,
Wala na.
20 degrees na. Wala
Hindi
na
na.
siya.
More than 20
Mainit na.
degrees.
Wala
Sobrang
na siya.
init na.
Tapos maabot namin ng 30 plus, 36, 37 ang Malay-Balay.
Yes.
Oo. So, mabawasan ang kanyang cold na
Coldness.
area. Wala na. Bawas.
So let's talk about how can we humans adapt to the climate change. Siyempre, nandyan na yan eh. Ang atin na lang naman is we will have to try to prevent further damaging, di ba? Kaya nga reuse, reduce, recycle tayo. Pero how can we humans, considering na we are living in this stage already, how can we adapt para kasi considering, di ba, isa sa mga effects nito actually is on health. If you notice, kung kayo hindi kayo masyadong sinisipon, mas madali kayong sipunin
Oo.
ngayon.
Health risk.
No, kung yung mga hindi walang asthma, naging asthmatic ngayon, di ba? So marami, at saka alam niyo po ba, in the medical field, ang dengue is more difficult to treat now. Oo, mas virulent yung mga diseases ngayon, infections because of the climate change. Kasi yung mga mosquitoes nag-i-evolve
Di
din
ba,
sila.
unang panahon, Dok, magkagat lang ang dengue mosquito sa umaga.
Umaga lang.
Oo.
Ngayon,
Karon, di
hindi
ba,
na.
year
24/7.
round? Oo,
Yes.
24/7.
24/7 na rin siya.
Change na rin ang
Kasi
kanilang
nag-evolve na
change
rin
na
siya.
siya.
Oo.
Daghan na kayo siya. Iba na talaga.
So how can we adapt as human beings? Kayo ngayon, what would your advice be to our viewers or to our family members na these are the things that we can do in order for us to survive all of these changes? Let's ask you, ma'am.
First of all is proper information dissemination is necessary for the awareness of everybody about the effect of climate change. So one thing is really to reduce the use of mga plastics and other mga materials that will cause the
Magagalit siya si congressman.
Yeah.
Yung, may congressman kasi na yan ang business nila yung plastic.
so ganun. So
Hindi ko na ibebedyo kung sino.
Siya lang
as
ang
far as- yeah.
yayaman. Ayun
So,
na nga
as
ang
far as
problema.
that is concerned, we always teach the farmers, especially now, of the effect that they have also to adapt the technology that requires the mitigating factors of climate change.
So sila din, tinutulungan din yung
Tinutulungan sila.
maintindihan
Oo,
nila.
maintindihan
Sa inyo,
nila.
Ann,
Kuan lang nga mo sa ma'am. Maori gyapon na reduce, reuse and recycle. Then i-refrain gyud ang pagsunog bitaw sa any nga labi na gyud mga plastic, mga ligid or kanang tanan-tanan
Di ka ni mga dry nga mga dahon, ka ng mga
Dapat
basura
i-decompose.
na inaano nila.
Yung mga paborito
Di ba-
ni Lola.
Di ba? Paborito ni Lola. Kasi sabi nila, pagka nagsunog ka niyan,
Hapon
mawala
na.
yung mga lamok.
Ay,
Oo. Is that-
iwasan na siya.
Yes.
Dili magsunog
Di ba
ba
dapat
siguro
bawal
limited.
yan?
Oo, bawal siya. Sa di ba kuan zero waste kita siya karon, di ba? I-separate na to para i-decompose. Then ang mga plastic i-recycle na siya para ibalik na to siya para lesser na lang ang pagkuan sa sa ilang production. Then ang atong mga lights once nga wala yung tao nga
Patayin.
naggamit patayin sa atong para ma-conserve then ato din ang i-unplug ang atong mga
Bala
ang
di ginagamit.
nakasaksak okay according to the studies abroad 70% sa ato ang mag-consume din na siya
Kapoy manggod.
Even if wala
Lalo na sa
natin
likod.
gigamit.
lifestyle,
basta
lifestyle, atong
naka-plug.
behavior,
Uh-huh.
atong behavior, oo,
Naka-plug.
i-unplug. Kay dili lang na sa ingon nga mag-save lang ka sa kuryente. At the same time, during thunderstorm activity,
Yeah, mo-
mabisan pa kung wala na siya nimo
Gigamit.
gigamit, then
Mukas,
nakasaksak siya,
mukas.
pwede siya nga maigo sa kilang.
Aha. So, yan, that's a very good tip to our viewers. No? What about you, Sir Sam? How can we conserve water naman? Kasi na-touch na nila yung iba. What about water sa
Yan,
inyo?
very important. Kasi pinaka-importante sa lahat, yung pinag-uusapan natin.
Yes.
Fish,
Tubig.
trees, lahat yan sa tubig. Ang tubig kasi, ang mangyayari sa tubig, according sa may isa akong speaker na narinig, never yan mauubos. Halimbawa, ininom natin tubig. Magkakaroon pa rin tayo ng tubig. Ang problema lang is, ang tanong, kung magkano.
Magkano?
Doon tayo
Very
magkakaproblema
expensive.
kung magkano.
Bottled water.
Iko-conserve lang natin ng tubig, for example, is pag naggumamit ka ng banyo, pwede mo namang kumuha ka ng tabo, then balde. Kasi malaki ang difference. Pag flush mo, yung flush,
Yeah, plus yung sweets.
then mas maganda pa daw na nagsha-shower na lang tayo. Kasi pag shower daw, mas diretso nababasa ang buong katawan ng tao.
So, mas konti ang tubig na nagagamit.
Opo, mas maganda.
At saka di ba nung araw sa mga probinsya, ang ginagawa nila, tabo-tabo lang.
oo. Balde-balde.
Tapos nilalagay lang sa planggana yung pinaghugasan sa katawan mo. At yun yung
Ibalik,
ginagamit mong
recycle.
panglinis.
Actually,
Di ba?
we are
That's
very
recycling.
thankful for the Department of Tourism kasi before kasi walang mga tabo sa mga hotel rooms, di ba?
Ngayon meron na.
Parang wag kasi cheap ganyan. Pero ngayon naka-adapt na rin sila.
Nakalagay na.
Kasi yun ang ginagamit ng mga tao eh. For example, yung pag-minimize na pag-washing ng kotse, araw-araw, dapat umaga or meron pa nga umaga.
Instead na i-host mo ng i-host yan at sayang yung tubig,
Tabo.
pwede naman na tabo-tabo lang.
Pero may
punas-punas.
number one talaga na solution. Very simple. You just harvest and catch the rain. Yun lang naman eh.
Eh, wala pa nga
Libre siya
ulan
eh.
eh. Di ba?
When
the
Sabi
rain
kasi nila
comes.
ganun na parang May. I-catch
Okay.
mo lang.
Pag umulan.
Free yan eh.
All right. So we need measures actually to adapt to the changing times here. And what lies ahead of us? Will it be a better year, better tomorrow for us and for the generations to come? Now, we have an interview and we'd like to show this to you, dear viewers, our interview with an international agrology and permaculture consultant, Mr. Daniel Garcia. Watch this, please.
Climate change has been recorded. This is not the first time climate changes, number one. You know a country called Greenland? All right, why do we call it Greenland? Greenland, because you have Iceland is called Iceland and Greenland is called Greenland, because in the 11th century it was green, today it's Iceland, covered with ice. So climate change is nothing new. What we know for sure is that the so-called carbon excess emission, which is a reality, nevertheless is not the main cause of climate changes, and this we know for sure. Let me explain to you very quickly something, how climate is being changed, altered, not because of excess carbon in the atmosphere, but because of a lack of carbon in production, which means the main production of carbon, solid carbon, is trees, growing trees. Cutting the trees over the world, which has been sadly our practice for the last 100 years, especially the last 60 years. Ethiopia lost 60% to 90% of its native forest in the last 40 years. And I can just name the countries, Philippines, by the way, just one of them as well. Cutting a tree will prevent a whole, I would say, a succession of a process to take place. I'll give you an example. that I know very well. Australia. A cloud comes from the ocean. Ocean, you have evaporation, then you have condensation, then you have transportation. The cloud moves pushed by the winds. It crosses Australia. Well, the ground of Australia, being more or less desert, hot soil, what happened? The cloud move up, you know. This is a very simple phenomenon. Clouds go up as it gets warmer. You know, birds are carried by the warm air. Okay, same with clouds. The phenomenon of condensation and crystallization of, if I can use this word, of the micro droplets to become drops, which will become rain when it comes through the space and fall here, will not happen. So this cloud is carried by the wind across Australia. Maybe it gives a few drops to some of the hills and mountains which have a few trees. And by the way, eucalyptus is not a bad tree. It's just as when you have too many of them, you get a problem. Eucalyptus does not release these so-called chemicals that will reach up the clouds and will bring down rain. Very simply. And this is something we discovered about less than 10 years ago. So, see, these clouds will give a little rain, eventually excess of precipitation in a certain period of the year. That's why even though we have 30% less water coming on the ground, okay, at times we have excess of water for a few hours, a few days, creating floods, also cutting the forest, while, and having a lot of freeways and highways and concrete. We have those massive and soil being tilled, massively tilled. We have these problems. We cut the edges, we cut the hedgerows, you know, we cut forests, bushes and tree, everything. So to have bigger fields, and that makes the situation worse. So now, in short, what happens when the water doesn't fall? Of course, when it comes over the ocean, there is a coolness of air, the phenomenon happens, the clouds will release its rain, so it will fall over the ocean. Now, we have observed this, hydrologists, that right now we have less rain coming on soils, on land, but we're having more clouds in the air. It's actually the cloud in the air who are creating this canopy which create the greenhouse effect, much more so than carbon. Now, we're not saying excess of carbon is good, we're saying we're not going to solve the greenhouse effect by stopping to release carbon. Carbon is in the air for a few centuries. All right, it's not going to go away. We cannot stop emission of carbon. What we can do, and I'm a farmer, I'm very happy to be part of the solution. What we can do is to plant trees. We have to have systems where we're going to help people, farmers, everybody, to just plant trees. Because as you plant a tree, the tree is carbon. The only thing that produces carbon in the world and absorb carbon, which is in the atmosphere, which is what you want, is a tree. A tree fixes carbon in the soil. So there are two things to do: plant trees and stop to plow. Today we have 150 million hectares with no tilling farming. California doesn't till its soil anymore. It's a process of the past. Now here it seems that people have not yet learned, and many parts of the world where I go, people have not learned how to cultivate the land without tilling. And that's going to be the next decade, our work, all environmentalists. When you plow a soil, what happens? You release 3 tons of carbon in the atmosphere. That's more than me flying from here to Miami or Los Angeles from the Philippines. So we are talking about solutions. The solutions are in the hands of the farmers. The farmers are not the guilty people. The guilty people are those that do not instruct the farmers the right way. Maybe the media have a role. We all have a role. As a farmer, I'm happy to be part of the solution to climate change. And by the way, if the climate change is 1 or 2 degrees here and there, that is not a major issue. Many people benefit from it. There are some countries that are very happy to have a few more degrees. Here it's warmer, not just because it gets climate change, we have a higher temperature, but because we don't have trees anymore. It's cooler in the shade of a tree than in the hot sun, basically. plant trees, stop to till the sound, learn modern tilling, farming, how to plant without having to till the soil. You're going to solve, I would say, 60% of carbon emission. Besides the fact we will have more rain, less clouds hanging over our heads, which means less greenhouse effect, maybe a decrease of temperature. Thank you very much.
So Earl, naside ba ka aning climate change? O mo nabawa na about ana?
Ay sa akong naibawan ang climate change, it's about siya sa nang bitaw mga phenomenon nga kanang dili siya natural sa world. For example, kanang mga change sa weather, kanang pagkuan sa mga sea level and all, kanang mga bitaw sa pag-init kaayo or sa pag-snow bisan asa nga lugar na nga dili siya kuan kayo nailhan.
About sa tong kausaban sa atong panahon kung inga na mga hindi nato makuan. Para dili maging kayo nga ako ginang nasubay.
Yung climate change ang alam ko dahil sa pollution. No, kaya nagkakaganito ang ating mundo ngayon. Masyadong mainit. Tapos biglang lalamig.
Akong nibawaan lang mo nga pagkahibalo mo nang kausaban sa atong panahon. Kuting ulan, init. Dinay usap, murag na usab na imbis ting ulan, nahimo na sa ting init.
Para sa ako ang climate change mo na siya nga sobra kayo ang init imbis kay ting ulan na unta pero init lang hapon.
Ano kaya yung epekto nito sa tao?
Maraming epekto ito, mga sakit. No, dulot ng sakit sa sobrang init, dehydrate ka.
So dagan siyang epekto sa tao, labi na sa mga farmers, which is ang mga crop bitaw kay mga daot, then ang mga animals sa kay mga kuan. So dako siyang effect labi na sa economy sa kuan sa atong bansa.
So dako ang epekto sa tao kay init. Wow, mga pasok ta madaot ta. Nya baha po dayon.
So kung manglabat ta dali na kay mo gatong mga gipanglabahan. Nya dili pud ta maganto sa kapita pero ang negative pud ana niya nga epekto sa ato ang drought maguna siya no. So ang mga tanom, mga matay katong sa mga farmers sila minus gid kay ilahang kuan ang ilang kuan silang produkto maglisod silang pagkaon sa panglawas sa tao no masinatian nato ang mga heat stroke mga matay ang uban gani labi na ang mga katigulangan.
The Total You with our episode, The Embattled Earth and You. And napakasaya na aming pag-uusap dito no, with my guests here from the ENR, from Pag-asa, and from DAR. Kulang nga ako from the Department of Agriculture. Kailangan imbitahin natin sa susunod. Now, we watched the video, di ba? Pinakita sa atin yung interview sa isang consultant, no? And he mentioned something that struck me was ang kanyang ending ng kanyang message actually on how to help us, you know, with these changes in the times of our climate, actually is planting trees. So parang napaka-simple ng kanyang solution para naman ma-solve natin yung problem. Yes, you can react to that, Sammy.
Actually, very timely talaga yung interview because this April, the Philippines is celebrating Earth Day on April 22, more specifically. Then ang programa ng DNR is magtatanim tayo ng puno, whether kahit na mainit, pero magtatanim pa rin tayo. It's just a matter of advocacy sa prinsipyo ng tao.
Siguro, Sam, isama nyo na dyan na pag nagtanim sila, magdala sila ng isang tabong tubig para ibuhos doon.
Balikan din, kinabukasan.
Diba? Tapos kinabukasan, balikan mo pa rin hanggang sa lumabas yung ulan.
Dapat i-adapt na lang. Dapat may programa kasi ng DNR, meron kaming Adapt a Mountain, then the flagship of the secretary is Adapt an Estero, which is very, very successful dito sa area natin. So, may adapt at tree na rin. So, may mga non-government organization, academe, mga estudyante. Kada mag-plant sila, responsibility na dapat tumubo yung plant.
So, you are actually educating also the students and everybody. You're going around to educate them, no? You mentioned, would you say na, heto sa inyong tatlo, would you say na ang mga tao ngayon are very much aware of the effects of the climate change, ma'am?
I think so, because they feel the hotness of the environment, so they feel already the effect of the climate change. So in fact, talking about the tree planting, there is also a program with the government that requiring all employees to plant trees and sustain. In fact, we are required to secure certificate from the barangay that its employee has planted a tree. I think it's 10 trees in a year.
10 lang, 100 lang, ma'am.
Maliit yun, yung 10
10 lang, ma'am. Oo. Hindi ikakasal, ma'am. Hindi bibinyagan. Yan ang iba.
Saan kinukuha yung seedlings? Sa kanila ang seedlings.
Meron sa DNR.
Sa DNR,
We have so many.
provide
So,
sila.
pwedeng kunin sa inyo, tapos itatanim yun.
Yes.
Pero yun na nga ang problem, hindi lang dapat tinatanim, inaalagaan.
Inaalagaan.
Greening. Green program
Diba?
na, ano naman, lagyan ng tubig.
Dapat diligan.
So, ang nangyari,
i-monitor.
wala namang evaluation after
Monitoring. Walang monitoring.
Wala kayong monitoring
Parang
yan,
ganun ba?
Sam? For all of it?
Dapat may
Pero sa sobrang
monitoring.
dami kasi, in fairness naman, sa sobrang dami, the programs are, nagpa-plant sila sa isang bundok, siguro scarcity rin ng mga tao, ng mga empleyado na mag-check. So far naman, may successful naman, in fairness naman sa program, may na-successful naman tumubo na yung plan.
Pero kailangan pa rin nating ipaigtingin.
Dagdagan.
No? Dagdagan pa rin.
Ang mangyayari siguro kasi, ang suggestion ng Department ng DNR is lahat ng mga program, lahat ng mga projects na magpa-plant ng tree, may office na ipapaalala doon para at least malaman nila na in this area may mga tinanim na. So, hindi naman, sige, mag-project tayo ng tree planting o dyan tayo sa mas malapit. Hindi, kailangan may designated area talaga na dito kayo mag-plant kasi
Heto yung nangangailangan.
Oo.
At mas maganda
Tama
ang
na
tubo
dyan
niya.
kasi masyado ng puno.
Opo. Tama yun. Dapat, di ba, may
Isang
planting.
place.
Yeah,
Oo.
one place per
Ganun ang ginawa
agency.
doon sa Bukidnon.
malasag.
Sa Malasag, di ba?
Bawat
Yan yung
area,
ginawa
bawat
nila.
agency, nakatuka, ito ang tataniman nyo.
So, ma'am, what about food supply in the coming 20 years? Do you think na because of all these changes now, can we foresee na nakakatakot naman magkaroon ng scarcity of food?
Well, if this cannot be prevented, that will happen. So that's why all the resources of the government now is steered towards the friendly strategy or mga ways of farming.
Actually, buong
That will,
mundo na. This is
Yes, this is international, global.
Yeah.
Bago lang,
Global
di ba?
na siya
Na
ng
nag-meet
problem.
yung mga head of state na talagang in-address na lang yung climate change. Actually,
walang-
nanalo pa nga si Leonardo DiCaprio, di ba?
Yes, because of
best
his,
actor.
Wala maka-escape.
So,
everyone
kung
of
baga,
us,
wherever you go,
everybody is
whatever you do.
affected.
So, in other words, it's up to us to be part of this, na kailangan tulungan natin to save Mother Earth,
Yeah.
di ba? Sayang
Consciousness.
lang kasi parang reactive again tayo Nung araw, hindi natin inalagaan. Ngayon pa tayo na. Sa inyo
But it's
naman,
not too
Miss
late
Anna.
naman.
Yeah, it's not yet
It's
too
not too
late.
late.
Yes.
Because
Miss Anna,
that's the same.
with all of these changing temperatures, would you say na hetong mga El Nino na, sa El Nino na tayo, magla-La Nina tayo, this is the flooding, di ba? Do you think that's also a cycle na that's going to be something na we need to look, to project and be careful of?
Yes. Dapat ipaalam natin sa tao na after ng El Nino, magkaroon ng La Nina, para ang decision makers ready, tapos as well as the farmers, kasi ilang mabaluan kung unsa na dapat ang crops ng ilang itanom, so handa na sila. So this year, expected na after this El Nino,
La Nina.
mag-neutral ang atong tropical Pacific
Which
by
is when?
May, June, July.
Pag sinabi mo, Ma'am
Neutral.
Anna, mag-neutralize siya, what do you mean?
So, meaning to say, pag neutral ang atong tropical Pacific, neutral ang pagdating sa ulan. So, during sa May, June, July, sakto ang distribution sa ulan din sa ato sa Philippines.
In other words, dili kay kusog, dili pud hinay.
Igo-igo siya. But, pagdating ng August, September, October, up to the next quarter, it is expected nga mag-cooling. Cooling na sad ang ato ang tropical Pacific, which is naana siya sa level, tatawagin na naman na La Nina. So, parang
So, excessive na naman siya.
Extreme.
Excessive.
That
And-
is the impact of climate change.
And when that happens, Ma'am,
So,
yung ating mga
affected.
farmers na
So,
naman,
they will be affected again of their
Tapos,
production.
baha. Sobra. Dadami na naman ating bagyo.
Yun, kaya yung na-mention
Oo.
kanina, Doc, we catch the rain.
Ayun, para
So,
di
di na-
babaha.
Kasi ang nangyari kasi, ang mga projects is halimbawa, to anticipate the rain, gumagawa sila ng mga kanal.
Kanal, oo.
Bakit din lang tayo gumawa ng infrastructure na i-catch natin yung tubig?
Pwede rin.
dams.
Pero yung mga dams natin,
Oo.
di ba, they do that? And yet, they open that up to release the massive water na hindi na kaya beyond the level eh.
Hindi,
Isn't
kasi
that enough?
would you believe na may establishment sa Singapore na wala silang, actually meron din tayong building dito sa Cagayan de Oro City, walang tubig na pumapasok sa kanila. Lahat, halimbawa yung ginagamit na panghugas ng, yun din ang ginagamit nila, pang flush.
Pang-flush, oh.
They're conserving water
Recycle.
talaga. Meron pang kumpanya doon na ultimo urine.
Ginagamit, yeah.
So, iniinom.
Nire-recycle nila.
Ano yung
Tinitreat
sewerage
nila
system?
yun eh.
Mahal kasi yun.
Oo.
Mahal yung
Tinitreat
pag-process.
nila yun.
Oo,
Oo.
sewerage system.
Kasi
Yung
may
mga
problem
waste
sila
lahat.
with the water eh. Kaya pag pumunta ka doon, they really have to treat that. And you can see their treatment facility. Now let's go to the challenges that each of your departments are faced with. Kumbaga, ano mga challenges meron kayo ngayon na sa tingin ninyo pwede naman nating solusyonan and yet parang medyo kailangan talaga ng marami pang tulong. We'll start with you, ma'am.
Rejoinder sa statement ni Sam tungkol about the construction or the provision of rain catcher. That is a very good project. In fact, our office also providing that technology to our farmers.
So meron din kayo niyan?
Yeah, meron. Kaya lang, yun nga dahil nga kailangan ng financial assistance sa mga farmers for the construction of the
Mahal din yun,
of the
magastos.
materials.
Kasi mahal din yun.
Mahal din yun.
Magastos.
Kaya hindi talaga ma-implement. Although that is nandyan na yan ang technology. In fact, we train our farmers to be para engineering because they were trained how to construct the rain catcher or what we call the CPWAS project. But they need the materials. So that's why they need the support of the LGU.
So dapat yung government natin should be helping our farmers Kasi it's a cycle of poverty, not just for them but for us. Can you imagine kung wala na tayong pagkain?
So malaki talaga ang role ng local government units to support the farmers, especially in the mitigating factors of the climate change.
Okay, what about sa inyo sa Pag-asa, Ma'am Ann? Unsa man ang inyong pinaka-challenge talaga na you need to hurdle for you to be able to perform your best in doing what you're expected to do?
Sa aming agency, we are, syempre, damihan yung aming mga observing facilities.
Kulang pa ba?
Yeah, nagdagdag pa kami ng mga Doppler radars. In fact, here in Mindanao, we have 3 radars.
Is that enough?
No.
To cover Mindanao?
No.
Hindi, no?
We have to
3 lang.
add more.
3 lang?
So, 3 lang muna sa ngayon. Anyway, in one radar, maka-cater siya ng range up to 500 kilometers. So, mayroon na tayong nakalagay doon sa may Hinatuan, which covers dito sa northern part ng Mindanao. And we have also in South Cotabato, Tampakan. Mayroon tayong isa. So makakover naman siya banda sa may dito sa may lahat ng part dito sa baba. And then meron naman tayo doon sa Zamboanga. So cover naman siya doon.
Pero you would want more.
More, yes. Tapos mayroon tayong tinatawag na yung mobile. Mayroon tayong mobile radar naka-base dito sa atin sa Mulugan. So kung saan dadaan yung bagyo, dadalhin yung mobile.
So kailangan pumunta doon yung mobile.
Dadalhin siya. Then mayroon pa rin kaming nagdagdag kami para makita natin yung tracking sa upper level in the atmosphere. Mayroon tayong tinatawag na upper air balloon sounding para makikita natin na saan na papunta yung bagyo, gaano
kung lalabas na ba siya
yung bagyo. Kasi pag malayo pa talagang i-monitor na yan. Outside pa, nandun pa siya sa tropical Pacific Ocean. And then, yung natin, yung isang kagandahan din ng upper air observation balloon, kasi pag mag-observe kami sa umaga, mayroon tayong may checklist. Pas makita mo for the 12 hours kung mayroon bang mangyayaring malakas na ulan. So with that, mapo-forecast na kailangan maghanda na yung nakatira doon sa mga low-lying areas.
How come, Miss Ann, na lagi nila sinasabi na minsan nagkakamali ang Pag-asa with their projections?
Hindi yun nagkamali. Talagang,
hindi talaga siya nakita.
Kasi sinasabi forecast. Hindi naman sabihin mo na talagang eksakto na forecast. Parang gawing forecast, more or less. Di ang mangyayari doon, sasabihin na natin, surecast.
What about sa DENR? What are the challenges that you are faced with?
Our legal battles, because we are dealing with industries, yung
Saka matitigas ang ulo ng industries, ano?
hindi naman kasi
Hindi naman.
hindi natin pwedeng gamitan ng kamay na bakal kasi pag ginamit mo yun, iisipin naman natin yung effect niya sa tao. Kasi when we say industries, hotels, factories, may mga empleyado din yan eh. Hindi naman agad-agad i-close mo yan kasi so, gano'n lang siguro to i-monitor sila, i-regulate sila, na i-check lagi yung if it's beyond the standards, yung binubuga nila na hangin. We have our problems with yung sa smoke belching.
Yes. Leila, let's talk about smoke belching. Kasi alam naman natin
Actually, on this Friday-
alam naman natin yun, di ba? That's number one culprit for destroying, di ba?
Carbon
our
dioxide.
environment. So,
Number
paano
one.
yun? So, paano
Emission.
yun? Alam mo, nakikita ko yan sila minsan, nasusundan ko talagang yung binubuga nila. As in, parang hindi mo alam kung saan nanggagaling. What
Itim.
are you doing about it?
Actually, marami kasi involved yan ng mga agencies eh. The Land Transportation Office. So, ang nangyayari kasi dyan, as part of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, nakakasama kami sa panguhuli nila. And wala tayong magagawa eh. Minsan ang nahuhuli yung mga driver ng jeepney. So, kahit mahuli man sila, maawa man tayo. Ganun talaga effect niya. Ayusin niyo yung kotse ninyo. Pwede naman yan. Kasi I have an experience and I was expecting that car will fail the emission test. Then to my surprise, mas bumagsak pa yung bagong sasakyan. So sa akin naman, it's just a matter of alagaan mo lang yun kasi yun yung kabuhayan mo eh. Pwede mo ipapa-change oil mo yan. So,
Pero more than that, kasi siguro, dapat magpakabana. There's this word, I like that word, magpakabana. In other
Kailangan
words,
natin discipline.
discipline.
Yeah,
And
kailangan
you
natin
have to
discipline.
care for your environment. Kasi this is what we will be leaving behind as a legacy,
Ayun na,
di ba?
exactly. Kaya dapat mahalin mo yung kabuhayan mo din. Halimbawa yung mga jeepney driver, taxi driver, mga bus. Kasi mahal ang bayad pag nahuli ka.
So kailangan alagaan
Yung
nila.
may-ari, dapat
Is there hope for us yet with all of the things that are going on around us, with the decline in the environment, with our climate and everything? Is there hope for us, ma'am?
Of course, there's always hope for the future, no?
Generation.
So the generation, that's why the efforts now of all government agencies is really to have a
As well
strong
as
collaboration.
private. Let's
And
private, kasama.
government and the private
Non-government
sector,
organizations.
non-government organizations to have a strong collaboration in doing some mitigating factors in this climate change. Kasi this is also a problem that cannot be solved by one concern of the agency or the government.
At saka minsan, iniisip natin, nasa gobyerno lang yan, problema na nila yan.
Oo, kailangan
When in
talaga.
fact, hindi dapat tulong-tulong tayo lahat.
Regionalize yung
what
pag-iisip
is also very unique ba sa atin sa Philippines? Kasi bakit sa ibang country yung emission talagang strictly nila?
Yes. Bakit?
Strictly observed. Bakit sa atin? Bakit hindi
Hindi natin mapasunod lahat.
mapasunod
Oo.
lahat?
Yung sasakyan, hindi na dapat i-renew. Yung lumampas na ng 5 taon, bakit sa ibang
Yes.
bansa?
Oo, bakit
So, we're
Kaya
talking
nila.
about politics.
Politics.
Ganun ba?
alright.
So meaning, sometimes
Miss
you
Ann, is there hope for the future generation?
Yes. Kasi opisina namin pag-asa. Oo, talaga.
That's true. What about you, Sir Sammy?
Oo naman.
So, magiging mas mahigpit kayo sa inyong mga
Mahigpit
kampanya
na kami.
against.
May nakakalusot lang. Konti
Meron
lang
pa
naman.
nakakalusot.
Hindi naman
Okay.
pinapalusot.
Thank you
Yung
very
rules
much.
and
We had a
regulations.
very, educational, informative, and entertaining discussion here. I'd like to thank my guests here for joining us. Ma'am, what would you like to tell our viewers?
Once again, thank you very much, Ms. Jean, for inviting us and sharing our experience in implementing projects that will also protect our environment.
Okay, what about you, Miss Ann?
Maraming salamat sa pag-imbita uli ito sa programa na to. I
And
hope mayroon
again,
pang kasunod.
yes, meron
Yes,
pa.
para makapagbigay kami ng information sa lahat nating mga televiewers, then para mag-save tayo ng life.
Yes.
So, yun naman ang ating pinaka-mandate sa pag-asa.
All right, what about you, Sammy?
Maraming salamat, Doc. sa pag-imbita. Sana makabalik ako dito.
You will.
Again, sa akin lang naman is...
By then, when we invite you again, we will be able to tell you, okay, Sammy, what happened to the emission test?
Sa akin lang naman is, suportahan natin ang mga programa ng gobyerno. Hindi lang ng DNR, ng Pag-asa, saka ng DAR. Lahat siguro sa pag-aalaga sa ating kapaligiran.
All right. Dear viewers, remember that the climate change that we are experiencing now is actually a symptom of a disastrous or planet Earth. In other words, it's a symptom that our planet Earth is actually in great distress. Now, we are responsible for it. Remember that we are the ones who were given the task to take care of our planet Earth, and yet we have been amiss in our responsibility. But there is always good news for all of us. Remember that we can actually reduce, recycle, and reuse. So dapat tandaan natin yan. Very, very simple things that we can do. We can actually help Mother Earth. And what is more wonderful here is actually in Revelation 21, we are promised that whatever happens, there will always be a new earth for all of us. Magandang gabi po sa ating lahat.